Hello and welcome back to another episode of Apple a Day. I'm your host, John Martins. In today's episode, I'm going to do a deep dive into writing an Apple script to toggle the display timer on and off. Now don't worry, you don't need to know anything about programming or scripting. It's not that difficult, and I am going to show you how I arrive at the script and some of the syntax, and I'm not just going to type in the line and not explain it. So you're going to get at the end of this, you're going to get a pretty good understanding of what I've done. And also what I'm going to show you can be the foundation for writing other scripts to updating other system settings. So I started by using the script editor application, and I was pretty happy with how that worked because I was then able to copy that script into a shortcut. And so we're going to take the same approach here. So the first thing you want to do is to bring up the script editor application, and a quick way to do that is to type in command space to bring up Spotlight Search and type in script editor. And you'll get this window, which is going to let you select a document to open, but I want to create a new document. So press new document. And here is our blank script. So just a quick note that I'm writing this in OSX Ventura. They changed the preferences in Ventura from previous versions of the operating system. So if you're running an older version, what I'm going to show you might not work. In fact, it probably won't, because the way in which the preferences are laid out prior to Ventura, it's a little bit different. Yeah, unfortunately, if you're not using Ventura, you might be out of luck here. So I'm just going to move forward, assuming that you are on Ventura. Like I said before, I'm not going to just simply type in the script. I'm going to show you how I figured it out. And that way you can use that skill to figure out how to change other settings. So the first thing we want to do is talk to the system settings. So the way you do that is to type in this line, tell application, and then shift quote to get the double quotes, system settings, and a double quote to end it. And then you can press return. And with every tell command, you have to have an end tell. So I'm just going to type in that. So what we have so far basically just says I'm going to talk to the application system settings, and then I'm going to stop talking to it. So if I were to hit play, what it does, it compiles it, and you can tell when it's compiled because it formats the text. And so you know that it's good. You can do the same thing by pressing the hammer tool. If I just hover over that, it says compile the script. That won't run it though. So the play button basically compiles it and then runs it. But of course, we're not doing anything with system settings, but I'm going to add one line in there and type in the word activate, which tells the application that we're talking to open and activate and turn on and come to the foreground. So I'm going to hit run. You can hit run by pressing Command R as well, rather than just hitting the play button. And look at that, it brought up the system settings. So that's the same thing as if I were to go to Spotlight Search and type in system settings and bring that up. It does the same thing. So we've written our first script, and all it does is activate the system settings application. So when I was trying to figure this out, the next thing I did was to examine the system settings scripting dictionary. The scripting dictionary contains a list of commands that the application will understand. It also contains a list of properties that you can set and change. Almost every application on the Mac has a dictionary, and the way we find that is to go under the File menu and press Open Dictionary. This list is basically every single application that's loaded on your machine that will have a scripting dictionary associated to it. So we're going to go down to System Settings. There it is there, systemsettings.app. I'm going to press Choose, and that opens up the scripting dictionary. Now, I was hoping there would be a command here to change the value of any preference. Unfortunately, that does not exist. But we'll go through this very quick anyway, so you get a sense of what the scripting dictionary has to offer. So on the top left, you can see I've got something called Standard Suite, which is something that every application needs to understand. And those are basic commands such as open, close, print, quit, things like that. Very basic stuff. And then underneath Standard Suite, you have something that would be specific to the application that we're looking at, which in this case is System Settings. So System Settings are a list of commands and properties that the System Settings application would understand. Other applications that have a complex instruction set would be things like Adobe InDesign. You can tell Adobe InDesign to pretty much do anything. You can control all of the settings. You can make new documents. You can add pages. You can add text boxes and picture boxes and import pictures, and you have total control. So as I said, the system settings, we've got a list of commands such as reveal and authorize. And then we have some properties or classes, they call them. One is for the application, one is for a pane, and one is for anchor. Now, we're only going to use two elements from here. We're going to use the reveal command to display a particular panel or a pane. And we're going to use pane to identify which pane that we want to reveal in the system settings. Again, this is all I'm going to show you here. I'm not going to get into the details of what everything actually means. It's quite clear there's nothing like set or update, as a command within the system settings, which would have been great had that been there. Would have made life so much easier, because then you could just say, hey, set, the name of the property to true or false, or to, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or never, that kind of thing. But sadly, like I said, that does not exist. Before I close this window, I'm just going to show you the reveal command. So if I click on that, and you can see right here what it says, reveals a settings pane or an anchor within a pane. I'm not sure what the anchor within a pane is, and we're not going to use that. We are just going to be concerned about the pane. So really the next question is, well, how do we know which pane it is? How is that identified? And that's what I'm going to show you next. So go ahead and close the dictionary, because that's pretty much all we can get from there. So back to the script. After the word activate, press return, and we're going to type in another line, and we're just going to type in get properties. So what this will do, we're going to talk to system settings. We're going to bring it to the front with the activate command, and then we're going to ask it for all of the properties it can give us. So I'm going to run that. I'm just going to move this out of the way. Okay, so when you run that, you see you get some data back, and you see this part here. This is important, where it says current pane. It says current pane, and it's got the ID. And the ID is a bunch of text. It's com.apple.appearance-settings.extension. And really, it's the word appearance that we're interested in, because that's where we were, appearance. Like if I were to switch this over to, say, Control Center and run this again, it now says Control Center. So that's very important. So we can use this to identify which pane that we want to reveal in order for us to then click on some of the options within that pane. So the pane we want to bring up is the lock screen right here, because this is where the setting exists that we want to change. The one I'm interested in changing, and of course you can use this to write scripts to alter anything, but I want to change the turn display off on power adapter when inactive. And I want to change that for 5 minutes down to never. So this is where we want to be. So if I run this again, now I get the ID of that panel, or pane rather, of the lock screen. And it says com.apple.lockscreen-settings.extension. So I want to copy this pane ID just by highlighting it and pressing Command C. I'm going to get rid of get properties. So now I want to use that reveal command to display the lock screen pane within system settings. So I'm going to type in reveal pane ID, shift quote, paste in the ID and close the quote. I'm going to change this, say, to desktop and dock, close it. And if I run this, it takes a second, but it switches it over to lock screen, as you can see down here. I'll show you that one more time. I'm going to put it back to, say, Bluetooth, close it, play. There, it jumps down. It doesn't happen instantly. So because of that delay, we actually have to put in a delay in our script so that we wait a moment before we start making changes to the properties of that pane. I'm going to do that right after the reveal. I'm going to type in the word delay. And the value here is in the number of seconds. I'm just going to put in 1.0. So now we have the reveal statement, and the script will then pause for a second or not do anything for a whole second while we wait for that pane to appear in the system settings. Okay, so now we can actually change the value of the preference or the setting. And of course, the one we want to change is the turn display off on power adapter when inactive. Now, AppleScript has something called system events, which allow you to program keystrokes and mouse clicks, and that's how we're going to do this. And that's why it's very important to have that delay, because if we're simulating a mouse click and a keystroke before that panel is in view, then whatever we're doing with the mouse or the keystrokes, that's going to happen on the wrong pane, and that's going to cause problems. So that's why that delay, again, is important. So we have to tell system events that we want to click on this drop down and then change the value. And you can do that with a mouse click and then subsequent keystrokes, like by typing in NEV. Actually, just N would have worked, but just to be safe, when we do it, we'll type in the first 3 letters. And then you would do a keyboard return to change it. And that's what we're going to do in code. So I'm going to put this back. So let's get to work with system events. So after the end tell, we're going to then talk to the system events application. So I'm going to type in tell application, system events. And the first thing we need to do within system events is to tell system events what application and window that we want to be talking to. So I'm going to type another line which says tell window 1. And that's a very common thing to do in AppleScript, is to say window 1 or document 1. And that usually just means the frontmost window or the first window or the first document of an application. So with system events, what we're saying is, hey, within system events, we're going to talk to window 1 of the application process. And the process name is system settings. So again, you could have done this within the statement here. You could have said, hey, tell application system events that I want to tell window 1 of the application process pages or numbers or Final Cut Pro or anything, right? So, but in this case, we're telling the process system settings, and that's going to receive the mouse clicks and the keystrokes. So after this tell statement, I'm going to hit return, and I'm going to do 2 end tells because we have to balance it out. And if I hit the hammer tool to compile, and we don't have any errors because A, it would have told us, and B, it's all reformatted. Now, before we go on, let's bring up the system events dictionary real quick. So I'll go into the file menu, open dictionary, roll down to system events, double click on it. And you can see it's got a lot more going on here than the system settings did. Now, I'm not going to go into great detail, but I do want to show you the window class. So a quick way to find that is just under the search bar in the top right, type in the word window. So what you want to do is click on the last one where it says a window belonging to a process. So I click on that. You can see all of these elements here that it can contain. Browsers, busy indicators, buttons, checkboxes, combo boxes, drawers, splitters, sliders, toolbars, text fields. So you can see that a window can contain all of these controls. When we dive in to control any application using system events, typically we're going to be talking to these types of controls, right? So we would say, hey, click on the slider and set the value to, from 0 to 50, or click on a drop-down menu or a combo box. And, oh, here, pop-up button. I think that's what we're going to be using. I believe this is a pop-up button because you click on it and it brings up a pop-up. So I just wanted to show you a list of the UI elements that we're capable of communicating with. That's pretty much it. So I'm just going to close that dictionary. This is the part I spent a little bit of time on because I did it the wrong way initially. I was diving in and getting the properties and then looking at maybe this is a group or maybe it's a sidebar item or it's a tab or whatever. I wasn't sure what to look for. And I didn't know about the command I'm about to show you until I had already done it initially. But once I found this other command, I just realized it's going to make everybody's life easier. First, you want to put in a blank line after the tell statement that talks to the system settings. And we're going to type in get entire contents. And that will give us every single thing on that window. So if you run it by pressing Command R, you'll see you get a whole ton of stuff. So that looks awful to have to parse through. Luckily, you can search. If I click down in the result area and I type in Command F, it will search within the results. So what I want to search for is the name of this control. Typically, the controls are called by the same name as their text. So in other words, this might be called turn display off. So why don't we try typing that in? Turn display off, and I press return. Oh, actually, I don't even have to press return. Well, look at that. We've got over here, turn display off on battery when inactive, which is not what we want because I'm interested in the power adapter. So, and I think this is it. turn display off on power adapter when inactive. So you see here, static text. So static text is the text itself, and static means it's just sitting there, it's not doing anything. So static text is the label that says turn display off on power adapter when inactive. Now we don't want that. We want the pop-up, and here it is here. Pop-up button, turn display off on power adapter when inactive. But it's not just that. If you have to read on, because this is where it gets complicated. And this is why this get entire contents command is so amazing, because it gives us the hierarchy of this control within any parent group or panel or anything that might be on. And you can see that it's pop-up button, I won't read the text again, of group 1, of scroll area 1, of group 1, of group 2, of splitter group, of group 1, of window lock screen, of application process system settings. Well, we already know we're talking to window lock screen, so we want this part here. The rest of this we don't need because we're actually already talking to the system events. So I'm going to take all of that, Command C to copy it, and I don't need get entire contents anymore. So I'm just going to type in tell and then paste that in, and then end tell. Press the hammer tool to compile to make sure it works. It looks good. So the next thing we want to do is our first command, and we're going to simulate a mouse click. So I'm going to type in just the word click. That's all you got to do. So I'm going to run this. Actually, let's close this. Let's change it to something else. Put it back to Bluetooth, say, and close this window up. So when I run this, it should activate system settings, change the panel to the lock screen, delay for a second, and then it should talk to that pop-up menu or the pop-up button for the turn display off on the power adapter when inactive. And we're going to do a mouse click, and you'll see that pop-up get clicked on and open up. And I get a script error. Oh, sorry, my mistake. I don't need the of window lock screen. So let's try this one more time. Hey, look at that. So it clicked on it. So now we want to be able to type and type in the word NEV or part of the word never, the first few letters, to make the selection drop down to the bottom. And then we're going to type in a return character. So let's do that next. So after the click, we're going to type in the commands to type in the letters NEV, and that's just the word keystroke with an N. And then we have to do them individually. So keystroke E and keystroke V. And then to make the selection, we have to type in return. So we'll do keystroke and just the word return. I'm going to run this, Command R. It changed it to never. That happened pretty quick. Let me reset it. Choose something else. Close the window so we can show how it runs from scratch. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. We now have a script that changes this system setting to never. So now we need a way to change it back. We can either add another script that does just that explicitly. For instance, we could have a script that turns it to never and another one that changes it to after 5 minutes. Or we can put some smarts into this script to have it toggle back and forth between the two values. So now in order to do that, we need to know what the current state or the current value of this pop-up button is. And luckily, there is a way to do that. So before the click command, right here, I'm going to type in a new line, just hit return, and I'm going to type in an if statement. So what we want to do is test the value of that pop-up button. So I'm going to type in if value equals shift quote never, then. So this will execute the subsequent lines, the ones I'm about to enter, in the script if the current value of this control is set to never. And if it is set to never, we want to change it to 4 or 5 minutes. So after this if statement, type in these lines. We want to click the mouse, and then we want to do a keystroke of F, then another keystroke of O, and another keystroke of R, and then a keystroke of space, and then a keystroke of 5. So that'll type out the letters FOR space 5. And then, of course, to make the selection official, we have to press return, just like that. So all of these lines will run if the pop-up button is set to never. But if it's not set to never, we want to change it to never. So the if statement has an optional command called else. So we have the if value equals never, then do this. And then if it's not never, we're going to put an else command. Everything after the else will run. The code that's already there, which actually sets it to never, that will run if it's not set to never. And we do need to close the if statement with an end if. I'm going to compile this with the hammer tool. It makes it a little bit easier to read. So you can see here that, just to go over it quickly one more time, if the value of the pop-up button is set to never, it'll do a mouse click and then type FOR space 5 and then return. But if it's not set to never, it'll run this code down here, which will set it to never. And let's test that out. Just going to move this over so we can see it. If I run this, it's set to never right now. This should turn it back to 5 minutes. And it did. See that? Now it says 4 or 5 minutes. I run it again. It should set it to never. And there it goes. Run it again. It should set it to 4 or 5 minutes. So now we have a script that toggles that value back and forth. Okay, so assuming you're still with me and this is working for you, let's move on to the next step. We need to quit the system settings app. But to be safe, we should put in another delay. Half a second should suffice. And the reason for this delay at the end is we don't want the application to quit before the mouse clicks and the keystrokes are finished doing their thing. So at the very end of the script, we're going to type in a new line. Tell application system settings. And then I want to delay for half a second. Delay 0.5. And then I want it to quit. So I'm just going to type in the word quit, and that command will quit the application. And then we have to end that, like everything else, with an end tell. So I'll press the hammer tool to compile. It looks good. So if I run this, it should switch it to never and then quit after half a second. That seemed like a little less than half a second, but I'm pretty sure that worked properly. So the only thing missing now is we kind of need to prompt the user as to what just happened, because it goes so fast at the end that you may wonder, did that switch to 4 or 5 minutes, or did it switch to never? There's a command in AppleScript that lets you display a dialog window, but we do need to know what text to display in that window. So we're going to make a new property, and I'm going to establish that property at the very beginning. So I'm going to add a new line to establish this property or variable. A value that stores another value is called a variable. We can call it a property as well. So I'm going to say set the result to no change. And that's like a default value. If there's an error or something, it's just going to say no change. What we want to do is set this result property to either never or 4 or 5 minutes. And that way we can display the result at the end of the process. But let's type in some more code and then you can get a sense of what's happening. So right after this, right after if the value is never, we're going to change the value of the result. So we're going to go set the result to, and we're going to say changed to 4, 5 minutes. And then after the else statement, when we're changing it back to never, we're going to tell the user that the result is going to be never. So we're going to type in set the result to never. And of course, the text is surrounded by double quotes, which is the shift quote. So if I press the hammer tool, it should compile without issue. And then at the very end, after that tell statement, we're going to type in the command to display the message. And that's a pretty straightforward command. It's called display dialog. Normally you would type something in quotes like hello, but we're not doing that. We want it to display the value of the text within the result property. So we're just going to say display dialog the result. Now, since AppleScript recognizes this is a property or a variable, that we are now displaying the contents of this property. So it should display either, if nothing happens, the words no change, or it should say change to 4 or 5 minutes. Oh, I forgot to type in change to. Or it should say changed to never. So let's go ahead and run this, and we should see that message come up. Change to 5 minutes. We run it again. Change to never. One thing that can happen, since we did activate system settings up here, there is a chance you may not see this dialog. It could be behind Windows because AppleScript or ultimately shortcuts might be in the background. So it's important to put in the word activate in front of this. So that way the script will become active and then it will display the message. Just a little safety net to make sure that the user can indeed see the message. Okay, so we're almost finished with the script. And the last thing that we want to do is to capture any possible error that might occur. There could be anything that can go awry, especially when you're dealing with mimicking, a user clicking the mouse or typing in a keystroke. The window might take too long to display. Something could go wrong. Who knows? It's always the unknown that you want to trap errors for. So the point is that if something does go wrong, you, the user, should know that something went wrong. So AppleScript has a way to trap this. There's a command called try. And so what we're going to do is at the very top of this, we're going to put all of this stuff into a try statement. We start with the word try, and then we'll go down to the bottom, and we're going to type in the words on error. What we want to do is bring the script to the front. So just type in activate, and we're going to display a message, display dialog, error occurred in quotes. And then we're going to end the try statement with end try. So if I compile that, what you'll see is that we have try, and it's going to do all of this code. And if at any time during the execution of all of this code that's highlighted, an error occurs, what's going to happen is it will then activate itself to be in the foreground and then display a message to you that just says error occurred. Now, you don't really know what the error is, you don't know why you got it, but at least it warns you that something happened, so you're not wondering why that pop-up button didn't change its value. So run it one more time to just make sure it works. Perfect. So if you've never written AppleScript before or haven't done any programming, congratulations on writing your first program. So now the next step is to getting this script to execute in a convenient way, because obviously you don't want to have to launch this AppleScript, every time you need to do it. There is a way that you can compile this as an application and just have that sitting on your desktop that you could double click on. But there's an even easier way. So we're going to utilize the shortcuts that are actually built in. So what we're going to do is type in Command space to bring up Spotlight Search, and we're going to type in shortcuts. Came up already, shortcuts.app. And what we want to do is hit the plus sign on the window right here, and that creates a new shortcut. And then, since this is to do with AppleScript, we're going to go over to scripting and scroll all the way down until you find, did I pass it? Run script. Where is it? Run AppleScript right here. So I'm going to I think if I double click on that, it works. Yeah, double clicking on it or dragging it over will bring the run AppleScript command over into your shortcut. So pretty straightforward. It says your script goes here, right? So I'm going to go back to AppleScript. I'm going to press Command A to select everything. Command C to copy it. Go back to my shortcut and highlight this whole area, just clicking and dragging. I'm going to press Command V to paste in the script. And notice it's got the same hammer tool here to compile. So if I click on that, it should compile correctly because it worked in AppleScript. Therefore, it should work here. And look at that. We've got a compiled script inside shortcuts. So notice that this shortcut defaulted to the name Run AppleScript. Well, we want something a little more specific. So if you just click up here in this area, oops, right here, we can type in the name of the shortcut. Let's call it Lock Screen Timer Toggle. Lock Screen Timer Toggle. It's kind of a mouthful. You can call it whatever you like, but that's the crazy name I chose. So if you click on the icon next to it, you can choose a color and an icon that you want to change it to. So if I click on this guy here, it brings up a list of icons. You can search for your symbols or your icons here. So I'm going to type in watch. There we go, little alarm clock. Let's use that. And let's change the color to purple. There we go, lock screen timer toggle. So if I hit play from here, it should just work. And it does. That changed it to never. If I hit play again, it should change it back to 4 or 5 minutes. It's great when things work. So if I close this window, and I'm already in all shortcuts, you'll see it right there. Lock screen timer toggle. I can hit play from here, and it's going to do the same thing. It's going to execute the script and run just as it should. It would be great if we could make this a keyboard shortcut, or at least a shortcut that would appear in the menu bar under the shortcuts menu bar icon. So double click on it and go over to the info icon on the top right where it says shortcut details. And we're going to say pin in menu bar, which I believe will put it up here. And there it is, lock screen timer toggle. And we also want to add a keyboard shortcut. So I'm going to type in Command, Option, Control, Shift, Pipe. So also you'll notice that it added it to the services menu. That's because in order for a keyboard shortcut to work, it has to be within a menu item. So you'll see under services, we've got the keyboard shortcut there and it says lock screen timer toggle. I can run this right now just by selecting it, but we want to be able to run it with a shortcut. So I'm going to close this. If I type in Command, Option, Control, Shift, and the pipe, I've had an issue with shortcuts and keyboard equivalents not working. It's possible I might have to reboot. I'm not sure, but it should work right out of the box, and it doesn't. I've tried quitting before. I've tried quitting shortcuts, running it. I'm pressing the keyboard combination right now, and it's not working, which is very frustrating. And that's a Mac thing. It's possible that the keyboard shortcut I chose is already in use somewhere else. Not 100% sure why, but it's not the end of the world. You can still run it again from the shortcuts menu up top, or you can go under the Finder or whatever application you're in. So you could be in any application. I could go to my notes and go to services, and you'll see it there as well. Lock screen timer toggle with the keyboard shortcut, which I'm going to try it again. Maybe it depends on the app you're in. Yeah, it doesn't work. So it's very frustrating. But in any case, the shortcut actually does work. So if I go to services and actually select it, it does run and do its thing. So that went pretty long, but I'm hoping that you learned something from this. Hopefully you got something good out of this. It's a shame that the keyboard shortcut didn't work, and as far as I could tell, it was nothing I did wrong. If anybody has a reason why keyboard shortcuts for shortcuts don't always work, please let me know. But in any case, it's not the end of the world. You can still run it from the menu bar as well as the application services menu. Also, this went long because I wanted to make sure to show the intricacies of creating a script and explaining it in great detail. And hopefully this was educational. I'd love to see some of the scripts that you guys might create, or if you're wondering how to automate some other tasks and have some ideas for another tutorial that I can do, please let me know in the comments. Thank you, as always, for watching. I'm John Martins. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time on Apple a Day.